deserve if funded. I'd like to ask Whitney Rikas, who is a parent, to speak and let you know the impact on her family.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
No, is your mic on?
I think it's on. The light's on. My name's Whitney Rikas. I want to thank you for letting me speak today. I'm pretty much here just to tell you my story, which I've realized has become difficult, so please bear with me. I have 2 children, and both my children are on the autism spectrum disorder. My oldest is 4 and doesn't talk. He doesn't have a single word in his expressive vocabulary. Before going to the autism program, he would become very frustrated because not only could he not talk to us, he wasn't understanding what we were trying to tell him. So things that seem very simple in a daily life were very hard for him to understand. When I would try to give him a bath, he wouldn't understand why I was moving him from one place to another. He would throw a fit and scream all the way into the bathroom. The whole time I was taking his clothes off, even picking him up and putting him in the bathtub. The second he got in there, he'd stop crying and laugh because he loves bath time. But he didn't know that's what we were doing. When he started going to the TAP program, eventually, when he walked in, they would show him a picture of the playroom, and this picture would tell him what I couldn't tell him, what the teacher couldn't tell him. It would tell him, it's playtime, we are going to the playroom, and he would take that picture and walk to the playroom and be happy and go in there because he knew what was coming and he knew what to expect, which I couldn't tell him. So now when he has bath time, I give him a picture and he takes it from me and he goes to the bathroom and lets me take off his clothes and put him in the bathtub, and there are no fights and no problems. My youngest child started the TAP program in June and didn't talk. Tried to use words. You could tell he was trying, but he didn't talk, and he became very frustrated because he was very intelligent and knew many things that we asked him. But because he became so frustrated with us, it was impossible to go to the grocery store. It was impossible to go shopping. It was impossible to go to restaurants. We would try to go to restaurants as a family, and we wouldn't even be able to stay there long enough to get our drinks. When he started the TAP program, he was still just as frustrated. They asked us to have him wear a helmet while he went there because he would throw himself to the point he would hurt his head, and they didn't want him to injure himself. When I would have to walk him in wearing this helmet, I would just want to cry. But I couldn't because I had to make him see that the helmet was the coolest thing in the world to wear. But I wanted to cry. Eventually, come this January, he doesn't have to wear the helmet anymore when he's at the TAP program. He is now saying his ABCs, counting. He is now putting things in numerical order. He knows all his colors, and he can tell me every Thomas the Train engine. Things he couldn't do in June, and I didn't know if he was going to be able to do. We can't go to a restaurant still, but we can go to the mall, and we can sit in the food court and choose our seat away or close to whoever we want. It's not ideal for most families, but it's perfect for us, and it's one step closer to where we want to be. It's not easy for me as a mom, or parents in general, to say that they need help raising their child, in my case, my children. But when you have a child with autism, or children with autism, especially severe autism, you have to ask for help. You can't get by without asking for help. And the TAP program is our help. And because of the TAP program, I had hope that one day my oldest child would talk. And I have hope that one day when my youngest goes to kindergarten, he won't have to wear that helmet. But without the autism program, there's not much hope that I'm going to have for me and my children. Thank you.
I'll just take a couple minutes, Senator. You're going to hear, you've heard
Ken, just make sure you introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Greg Cox. I represent the Autism Program. One of the things I want to throw out there is we've heard a lot of how this is going to impact. We've heard a lot of talk about why this is going on. The resources aren't there. I want to encourage you all to take another look at the revenue estimate for the current fiscal year. Fiscal year 15, the revenue estimate that the governor's office is using is conservative. I've done revenue analysis for the Senate Republicans for 10 years that I was there. Before me, the analyst that did it before me is sitting in the room. The analyst that did it after me is sitting in the room. It's something that we've used for a very long time. Right now, through 3/4 of the fiscal year, over the 30-year period, we've collected 62.9% of our revenue in the first 3/4 of the fiscal year. Right now, we've collected 66.6% of the corporate income tax to date of the current current projection. Of personal income tax, we usually collect 68.7% of our revenue. Right now, we've collected 75.5% of the governor's revenue estimate. Of sales tax, we usually collect around 72%. We've collected 74.7% of the governor's sales tax estimate. We're running hot on all the big three revenue estimates. I think if the people in the room that got together and put this fiscal year 15 budget fix together, got in the room and talked about revenue as well, I think we might be able to determine that there's going to be a little bit more revenue at the end of the fiscal year than the current budget estimates are saying there's going to be. Matter of fact, the COGFA revenue estimate that the General Assembly has used for a decade to build budgets is about $30 million more than the governor's estimate, and that $30 million would put this $26 million back in the budget. So maybe we could all get together and talk about revenue, and I will make myself available at any time, and maybe we could get this thing resolved quickly and easily so we wouldn't have to sacrifice some of these services that have been so good for the people that have received them.
All right, thank you. And I really want to just thank you for your testimony here today, particularly you. I imagine that it's very challenging to share the stories and what you're going through, and really do appreciate it. I think it's really important for us to understand that there are real implications for the actions we're taking here, and you're really bringing that home and did so very eloquently. And I appreciate your willingness to be here today. I'm sure that was not an easy thing to do, so thank you. Questions? No? Oh, Senator Sullivan?
Sorry to hear about the fate of the Rockford program. It was mentioned earlier that there's really not much of analysis as far as the costs down the road. You've heard the expression, penny wise, pound foolish. A lot of program cuts we make seem to fit that category. This, I think, is one of them as well. Can you spell out what this means as far as extra state costs down the road when you impact programs like the ones in Rockford?
I couldn't speak to it with any specificity. I could say, based on the research that's been done in many states, this would have an impact in long-term mental health, developmental disability services, general welfare services, and special education costs.
But you cited several other states where they put a dollar amount to that analysis.
There are different states that have done different estimates. I mentioned Washington State. I believe it was the one that indicated approximately a $2 million additional cost per individual with autism. Other studies have shown that the savings in the long run is approximately $7 for every dollar spent in early treatment.
Have you shared these with the administration and their budget director?
I have not been contacted by the administration or the budget director.
All right. I urge you to share those figures. Thank you.
Senator, we did meet with the budget director prior to the suspension of the grant. He has some information. I'm not sure if he had that specific information, but we did meet with the budget director about the autism program before the suspension of the grant.
All right, thank you. Can I just ask Director Newting to do a follow-up? I just want to ask you about the revenue issue that Greg Cox
And I'd just like
raised.
to leave this for the committee.
Thank you very much, and really appreciate your testimony. And ma'am, your children are lucky to have you as a parent. Thank you. Yeah, no, he was talking specifically about where we are in revenue versus history. Do you have, what's your take on that information and COGFA's revenue estimates versus the governor's office?
Well, COGFA is close to us. I don't know that they're 30. I mean, I take Greg at his word, $30 million difference. I think reevaluating revenue and relooking at your projections is always prudent. I would suggest, I don't know if that's a prudent thing to do before April comes in. You know, April is a very heavy income tax receipt month. I think based on April, we should have a better idea of what revenues look like. I don't want to get into the temptation of just raising revenue estimates every time we feel like we need to find some more money to do something, but we would be glad to take a look at that once April is in and do a thorough analysis. And if there's real money there, then we should talk about that. But at this time, I don't have any information that I could use through the Department of Revenue to reevaluate those revenue estimates right now.
So
Senator Kotowski?
just, Director, given some of the testimony that we've talked about, I know there was just a discussion about revenue, and I appreciate you're looking to be cautious about this and not to replicate some of the practice of the past, but given some of the testimony that you've heard today and the impact on these families, I would like to be able to work with you and your team and the head of DHS, and I'm sure that our members of our caucus and respective members of the committee feel the same, to do our best to restore funding for these programs and to figure out a way to do that within the parameters of the current budget agreement or any other steps that we can take. Can we get a commitment from you that you'll work to do that, to try our best to restore this funding?
Well, you can get a commitment from me that I'm glad to talk to you about alternatives, other ways to try and make this budget balance, yes.
So does that mean you'll be looking at some of the other areas, some of the other grant lines have still yet to be explored to possibly look at ways of funding this area, the state budget? Is your work done yet? To Senator Menard's point, is your work done yet, suspending some of these grant lines?
I don't think it's done. And again, we're going to be forced to make some de-obligations based on the 2.25% reductions.
So it sounds to me your commitment is to look at some of these other alternatives, but also to explore other areas within the state budget. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, do you have any other flexibility within the confines of the budget to be able to address that? Could we have looked at, to Senator McGuire's point, it was here before, could you have looked at ways of completely zeroing out these programs, being able to give them some dollars to be able to continue to provide a basic level of service the rest of the year?
I will commit to you that I will work with you to try and see what can be done. But ultimate bottom line, got to fill the gap. Got to have the balanced budget. That's the bottom line.
You know, and I keep hearing you say that, and you know that. I appreciate that. And you know the measures that we have passed that, and as I indicated before, that commend the governor for attempting to live within the means provided by taxpayers in his budget introduction. I keep hearing you say that, but I like moving forward, these resources that were tapped into this $1.366 billion was designed specifically to fund programs like this, in our opinion, in my opinion. So I'd like to be able to see a way in which we can work within the existing framework of that legislative agreement to try our best to provide some relief here. So I look forward to working with you, and I'm sure members of our committee do as well on both sides of the aisle to make that happen. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much. Again, appreciate your time here today. And with that, we will adjourn Appropriations 1 and 2 committees. Thanks.